Hello, welcome back to 100% Real with Ruby. Here we are going to jump straight into part two. And if anything you hear resonates with you, just share it away, tag me, reach out to me. I will be happy to chat. And as I'm sure Thomas will as well, we would love your feedback and enjoy this part of the episode. And it's almost like surfing the urge. Like, okay, there's this urge for me to react. I'm sitting with it. I'm feeling it uncomfortably. I know that I want to respond, but I'm not going to do it anyway because I know the backlash is going to be worse than the action itself or any alternative thing. And I just before you go on about how to approach something like how this relates to perception and stories that we tell ourselves is I'm gonna say at strength stretch with Eve on Instagram posted this amazing thing about being able to build a positive narrative and seeing and appreciating the brighter side of any dark situation. She says being able to see the positives doesn't negate the suffering and discomfort we feel during this time. And then she goes on to say, but having things to be grateful for, focusing on what I can control right now, provide and accept, make a hell of a difference in letting go of the shit you cannot control. Thinking about what's going to happen in the future, thinking about how uncertain this is, how overwhelming that is, isn't going to take you anywhere further. And it's the same with the case that he was just talking about. Reacting in that way isn't going to take him any further. Is that the person he wants to become? Does he want to be aggressive and then form this negative relationship and then feel and then have the guilt and all the resentment happening after that? Now, the thing most people struggle with is that pause moment, though. Until you master the pause, you are at the benevolence of the world. Like I think that's the word to use, I don't know, but you are at the feet of the world. Like you are not in control. This is where I guess gratitude really helps, taking ownership and reframing the stories that you tell yourself. So how exactly does gratitude come into all of this in a way that we can start feeling better about a situation, and how gratitude can actually help us learn our identity because we're not thinking so much of what we lack? Because I think that is the source of so many problems that face us, is that we're just thinking about everything that's absent. Even in terms of food, we're thinking of it's straight away we're in this restriction mindset of everything we can't have. In terms of our body goals, it's thinking in terms of we're not there yet, we haven't done this yet, we don't look good yet, maybe once I'm fitter I can actually start going to the gym. Like I think it's, once I said raising the floor, but how can gratitude and the stories that we tell ourselves actually move us forward in wrapping up the whole lockdown, just not just lockdown, because I think this all addressed what we wanted to address. It really did, because now it's actually giving us direction from what we can do with lockdown to how we can apply it to ourselves now and moving into the future, and why it is so important now to foster all of this so that when we come out of whatever situation it is, it's not going back to where we once were, or okay, life can start again, but it's just a continuation of everything that was, because time didn't just pass, you actually made use of it. So how can gratitude really help with this, and emotional processing, and I guess everything we were saying before about radical ownership and radical acceptance?
You said something and I was like, that's the best thing ever, I want to touch on it, and then it slipped my mind. And anyway, it'll come back to me, but it was really clever and I wanted to emphasize it, but we'll get there. Look, in terms of this whole thing, as I spoke about in the example of the confrontation with that guy, is that things outside of our control are going to happen. Lockdown's going to happen. Other people are going to act the way that they act. And so taking ownership of our headspace and acceptance versus attachment, things like that, and allowing gratitude to become the key principle, is that we can choose how we view these situations as being on the way rather than in the way towards where we want to be in life. And so a lot of it in some ways relates to the identity piece of when we are talking about personal growth, personal development, living a fulfilling life, achieving all our goals, all that good stuff. We kind of need to operate from that future place of, okay, where do I want to be in 6 months time, 12 months time, a couple of years time, or more importantly, who do I want to be? And then working backwards and going, okay, in order to be that person, I actually need to kind of become that person now, in terms of ask myself, how would that person act in any given situation? And then that, when we work gratitude into the equation, allows us to view any circumstance, any situation like lockdown or confrontation or whatever stressful thing it might be, and ask ourselves, how is this actually contributing positively in some way towards who I want to be and where I want to be? Now, sometimes that might simply be that it's showing us what we don't want. But oftentimes it's simply that if we have the view of, I want to be the master of my internal world, which I think everyone should ideally have that perspective of taking ownership of your headspace and then recognizing that you want to have the best possible headspace and be in control of it. Well, you can then view circumstances that most other people are complaining about, like lockdown, and go, I'm viewing this as an opportunity to grow, as an opportunity to, as you said, sit with myself and learn more about who I am and what's really meaningful to me, what really lights me up. Go through a process of learning what my personal values are, things like that. Do you know Mojo Crow? Are you familiar with him? Ben Crow. Mojo Crow is his Instagram thing. He is sort of in the life coaching, headspace coaching, resilience space, works with Ash Barty and Dylan Olcott and a few other like footy players and celebrities and stuff. And I was just going to make a recommendation for people. He's just produced an app called the Mojo Crow app. And they do some pretty cool work around kind of like writing your own story and figuring out what your purpose is and a few other things like that. And one of the questions they ask is identify what your earliest, happiest memory is or was, and being clear on why that was so meaningful to you, what feelings did you have around that, and allowing that, recognizing that is probably the most authentic, like fulfilled version of yourself almost, and how can you replicate those emotions today? Anyway, Mojo Crow, good follow for people to check out. But the amazing thing about gratitude is simply that it allows us to perceive virtually any situation, even the negative ones, as something that at least we're now glad happened. Now you can simultaneously be frustrated by something, unhappy about something. You're allowed to feel sadness and distress and disappointment and still be grateful for something. Like that's the key. We tend to have this dichotomy of, I'm either happy about something or I'm unhappy about it. And if something is negative and challenging, that therefore I wish it didn't happen. But you're allowed to be frustrated and stressed out by lockdown, or disappointed, or maybe your whole world has been fucking shattered because your business has had to shut, and maybe you've lost friendships, or you're feeling really anxious and stressed and isolated, and whatever there will be people who are going through that, and we don't want to trivialize the magnitude of that for some people. But my point is that it is possible to be feeling those feelings, and as we said, not avoiding them, but actually actively feeling them, and simultaneously be grateful for something, and simultaneously be viewing say lockdown or whatever challenging situation as something that we're glad on some level has happened, if we're aware of the upsides, if we're aware of how it's teaching us to grow.
I've got 7 words.
And
don't be afraid. Yep. Don't be afraid to ask for help. People are scared to ask for help. Continue. That's just so important.
No, that's brilliant. Yeah,
you're talking about people that are really struggling. Like, seriously, do not be afraid to ask for help. I can't believe we didn't touch on any sooner, because you can't get through shit alone a lot of the time. Like, we cannot. This is like, we touched on human connection, but we never mentioned help and support. You need to ask for help. You need to be vulnerable. Can we talk about vulnerability in all of this as well? Like, we need to learn that vulnerability grows us. Vulnerability is untapped potential. It's a chance for growth. It's showing us where we can actually excel, because we're vulnerable in those areas. We're weak in those areas. And it's just like, you're zooming the fuck out. You like growth, just like progress, isn't just about one dimension. It's not just one direction. You can grow in terms of things outside of your physical, because your outer world is dictated by your inner world. Your inner world dictates your outer world. Continue. I just need to say, ask for help if you need it.
No, that's massive. That's honestly, as we said, human connection, social relationships, probably the biggest factor in resilience and health and well-being. And asking for help is a major element of that. And asking for help is a vulnerability, right? And so we do probably need to relate that to, as you wanted to touch on a few times, the stories we tell ourselves, in that we tend to have these stories in our head. Sometimes we're not truly aware of them, that, you know, asking for help is weakness, or that if I ask this person for help, that they're going to think something of me, or whatever it might be. And the thing about that's often related to shame, and shame is this emotion that it can be really crippling. But the amazing thing about shame is that it basically dissolves the second that you put a spotlight on it, in the sense that the second that you actually admit what you're feeling and how you're maybe struggling, and admit that to someone else, the shame more or less dissolves, because shame is something that we need other people. We don't need. It really helps to have other people witness it and hold space for it, and then accept you for it. So relationships are huge, but the other example I was going to use is that a lot of people have so many stories around, for example, seeing a therapist. They have this story that, like, oh, if I see a therapist, that means I'm broken, or people are going to judge me, or this or that. And like, that's a bullshit story, because the fact is, the information's out there. You could do so much research into this. A lot of the time I get really frustrated because people are attached to their struggle, they're attached to their suffering. And so they actually stay committed to stories that stop them from getting help, because that would force them to acknowledge that story may not be true. You know what I mean?
I love this.
That's a tangent. That's a tangent.
I love that topic. Keep going into it. I love that topic. Keep going, because shame and that tangent you're going into right now is so powerful, and it links everything together.
It's massive.
We were talking about acceptance at the very start, and it's the acceptance that can drive a lot of our feelings and perceptions about things in a negative way. So touching on this shame, as you guys can listen to this thing again, but shame and the tangent that I'm gonna push Thomas into are so important. So.
No, spot on. Fair enough. It is. It's a really important thing to understand, because typically we're resistant to asking for help because we have shame around the thing that we're asking for help with. Because we, as our brains love to do, we make meaning out of things. We tell ourselves stories. We make meaning out of, if I need help with this, that means something about me. It means I'm not smart enough, strong enough, capable enough, brave enough, whatever enough. And so we start to tell ourselves stories about things, and we make it personal, rather than it just being, something that is. And we tend to sort of get ourselves a little too hyper fixated. Now, this relates back to the identity piece, actually, that if we have our identity too wrapped up in one particular area, and then we're struggling with that, well, then we're going to have a lot of shame around needing help with that thing, because we think, well, if my entire identity is wrapped up in this thing and I need help with it, and I'm not strong enough or smart enough or clever enough or resilient enough to manage this thing, then who the hell am I without it? And I'm not good enough for this. So then we feel shame about asking for help with it. And so if we can do, as we kind of spoke about earlier, like diversify our identity a little bit and recognize that we have so many things about us as a human being, so many strengths, awareness of all of our values, recognize that we're so much more than just our job. We're so much more than just our career, or just our physique, or just our fitness, or just our relationship with a partner, or whatever it might be. And we don't have all of our personal identity eggs in one particular basket, then it becomes a little bit easier to ask for help with that thing, because we're not so defined by it.
You touched on this right before we started. Remember how you said, oh, by the way, this thing makes me anxious. Oh, wait, no, I don't want to say that this makes me anxious. I'm responding in this way. You just mentioned that attachment. So, yeah.
I just, to give people that context, is that I said something that I do makes me anxious. I can't remember what it was.
You take too long.
It frequently takes me so long to do tasks, because I struggle way too much with perfectionism. And so I said that it makes me anxious when I have lots of tasks to do. And then I said, hang on, no, I don't like that language. I create a feeling of anxiety for myself based on, anyway, I was just being very careful with language because language is huge. Okay, so I've got a couple other things I want to touch on in regards to lockdown and stuff like that, because the fact is that how you view the world or how you view other people is really just reflecting your own internal world, right? And so I had a conversation with a guy the other night who was talking about the fact that lockdown, I messaged you this last night, that lockdown or COVID, the last 18 months, has really revealed how most people are self-centered and out for themselves. And that was his statement or his view based on the whole toilet paper fiasco when everyone was hoarding stuff in the supermarkets and all that kind of stuff. And that's a viewpoint that's held by a lot of people, that COVID and lockdown has revealed how most people are shit. And that is categorically not true at all. You have that perspective of humankind that everyone is selfish, because the fact is there are plenty of us, myself included, who have had far more focus on the upsides, in the sense that I've noticed people are kinder for the most part and more patient, and that plenty of people smile at you more on the street now. And my point is that you can choose to view. You see what you're looking for, right? Like, you can choose to focus on how some people were really selfish and hoarding food and all that kind of stuff. And you could also try to actually meet them with compassion and empathy and recognize that those people were just panicking and stressed out and operating from their level of consciousness. But the fact is that you can also choose to focus on just how many people have used this time to go out of their way to help others with mental health, or positively impact other people in some way. I use the example of working hospitality, right? So I've been doing bartending up here at Hoffman. And coming into this, I had frequently heard from, I won't name names, but people I know who've worked a lot in hospitality who say that working hospo makes you hate humankind because so many people are rude and unkind and treat hospo workers poorly, right? That hasn't been my experience, because I choose not to see it that way. There have been people who have been impatient or unkind or whatever. I treat them with empathy and compassion and recognize that, imagine how much their internal world must suck if they're being rude and uncooperative or impatient with the person bringing them their food at a restaurant or whatever, or the person serving them their drinks. Whereas I've noticed plenty of people that I've interacted with that have been super patient and kind, and they've we've mucked up something with their order, and they totally meet us with compassion and empathy and go, oh, we get it, you're busy, it's cool. Like, my point is that you see what you're looking for, because I've seen plenty of examples of people being kind and helpful, and I've found the whole experience to be a net positive far and away, and had a lot of great interactions with people, and gone like, oh, there are so many people who are so nice. And the people who are, maybe unkind or rude or abrupt or impatient, it's like, I don't take it personally. I don't make it mean something about me. I don't make it mean something about them. I try to meet them with compassion and just go like, like, if that's how they treat other people, imagine how much it must suck to be inside their head. You know what I mean? Another example of that, we're going off on a tangent here, but I think it's a relevant one for managing our headspace. Another example of that is, I was talking about this with someone last night, is when you're in the gym and you're afraid of judgment, right? And I get it, because it can be an intimidating environment, but ultimately it's largely a reflection of how much you're judging yourself. But something that I want people to really focus on in that regard is, if you're in the gym and someone else is there and they are being judgmental of you, let's say hypothetically they actually are looking at you and thinking you look like a dickhead because you don't know what you're doing, or some judgmental thought. If that person's over there and that's how judgmental they are being of you, who's a beginner or unconfident in the gym, imagine how much it must suck to be inside their head that is the kind of energy they're projecting outwards towards other people, that they can't just meet someone else with compassion and empathy, that they are being so judgmental of someone else who's just having a go at this thing and figuring out how to do this new skill. Like, if someone is being judgmental of you, like, one, why are you making their opinion mean so much? And two, try to actually, it sounds crazy, but like I said with the confrontation I had with that guy, try to meet the person who's judging you with empathy and compassion, and recognize that if that is their attitude that they project outwards, imagine how hard they are on themselves, and imagine how much it must suck to be inside their head if that's the kind of attitude they project outwards towards a beginner who's just trying to figure out the lat pull down at the gym. Do you know what I mean? Like that, it sounds counterintuitive, but if you can meet
it's a really good point.
People who are judging you with compassion and empathy, it suddenly makes their opinion seem so much less scary. And you're like, oh my God, imagine how much it must suck to be that person.
Yeah.
Equally, it also forces you to meet yourself with empathy and compassion. That you're allowed to struggle at this thing and be figuring it out, and you're allowed to suck and or be new at something. But also recognize that potentially are you the one being judgmental? Because frequently the people I find who are most afraid of judgment in the gym are the judgmental ones. As in, it's the beginners who go, oh, the gym is full of obnoxious people who just want attention, and look at her, how is she wearing that, and he's so vain and making all this noise and stuff. And it's like, and then they go, and I'm afraid of them judging me, they're intimidating me. It's like, can you have the self-awareness to recognize how judgmental you were just being within that statement? No wonder you're afraid of judgment, because you're judging others and you're clearly judging yourself as well. So pretty much if we just have empathy and compassion for ourselves and others, everything else basically gets better from there.
And that's the thing, if you can't, okay, having empathy for yourself, but if other people aren't reflecting that, and your fear of them judging you, it says more about them and them being unsure of themselves. Like, look at this is going to be really controversial. I'm sorry, so I'm prefacing that. But look at the people who are overweight, unfit, unhealthy, categorically slobs. They're quick to judge fit people and evil eye them and all this other stuff. And it's those people, because they're not willing to either put in, it's like, people might say, yeah, well, you can put any story you want to that kind of story, but it's like, whether you want to say no, it's not because they don't have the motivation to do what you're doing. It's just that they're happy with life the way it is. And it's like, well, if they're happy with life the way it is, then they should accept everybody, have radical acceptance, and not be judging people. If you're judging people, you are internally unhappy with where you are right now, or this is why all these pillars are so important. I want to highlight something. I wrote it down because you gave me like I said, this isn't a mindful moment, it's a mindful mindgasm. Okay. So he touched on how we are so quick to focus on the negatives and not the positives. So he was that was right. He was talking about the cafe. So this can come to everything. For example, people getting people judging them versus people complimenting them, all this other stuff, like bad comments on your social media versus good comments on your social media. 90% positives, but we focus on the 10% negative. This happens in our journey of health and fitness. Like, I've been working with this girl for 2 years, and this is how negative self-talk is. And it's going back to that conversation I had with one of my guy clients, where I've been telling him for years that he needs to stop trying to impress other people or do things for other people and start actually looking deep within him, because he doesn't do that. And even though I've been telling him for years, he's only just saying it physically and admitting it now. Now, whether he acts on it is a different story, but it's like, we can know all the things, but you need to actually act on it. Like, this is why gratitude is so important. So back to what I was saying, we focus on only the negative. We don't catch ourselves winning enough. As a coach, I get people coming to me with more of their struggles, more of their struggles, and more of the things that they did wrong than the things that they're doing right, then their wins. And then this feeds the stories we tell ourselves and our identity. Oh, I'm not good enough. Oh, I'm not enough. All these I'm not enough. And then we come from a place of lack again. And this is how important gratitude is, and how reflection and self-introspect is so important. You need to pause. Like, the pause is hard. Practice the pause. It's a skill you need to develop. These pillars that we are both talking about are so important.
That's such a good point about, and that comes back to needing to do journaling and gratitude journaling, because the amazing power of it, we didn't touch on, or we did touch on gratitude, but we probably didn't go deep enough on it, as far as when you actually consciously write down all of the wins, all of the things that are going well, say at the end of the day. And the example is, that's a perfect example of the client who has a bunch of things that they're succeeding with, but they're hyper fixated on the things that they're not doing well, the things they can't do, and they're not giving themselves enough credit for their their growth. What we don't do super well as human beings sometimes is we don't integrate our wins, in the sense that that's a Brennan Burchard quote, in the sense that we go 6 months, 12 months, and you've made a lot of progress, but we haven't actually integrated the wins into our identity and developed the belief that, oh, actually, I did all of these things, I can probably do more. But the really cool thing about gratitude, when we consciously practice it, particularly when we write it down, because writing takes, but when we write things down, we're sort of combining left brain, right brain. So we're integrating things better, making it sink in better. Writing's really powerful. Very similar to the pensieve, as I think Alan Rickman says in Harry Potter, the thing where they take their thoughts out. Have you seen Harry Potter?
I love Harry Potter.
Yeah. So you know the thing where they can take their
Yeah.
memories out and like look at them. Yeah. So I think of journaling as the same thing. You can take your thoughts out of your head. It's not so jumbled in here, and you can kind of see them in front of you.
And that
the thing about gratitude,
that actually elicits emotions, like clearly. Like if you watched Harry Potter, imagine, like, think about how Dumbledore was actually able to feel things better. Like the expressions changed on his face because he was reliving it again.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, isn't that cool analogy? The great thing about consciously practicing gratitude, in the sense that you actually, at the end of the day or at some point in the day, you actually stop, and you don't have to write it down. It's probably better if you do, but you consciously actually reflect on what are all of the things that went well today, and try to really, it's called somatically, which means somatic just means to do with the body. So like actually feel in your body, like how does my body feel when I think about that nice thing that happened, and consciously get a feel for it. And then that you mentioned a client who couldn't see the benefits of why they should do gratitude journaling. They haven't really felt the physical feeling yet that they get from consciously focusing on all of the things that are going well and listing them. But then equally, as I spoke about earlier, taking the things that are perceived as negatives right now, and write, how can I be grateful for this? How is this teaching me? How am I learning from this? How am I growing from this? How is this showing me what I don't want? How is this actually helping me develop better skills to manage my mind? Anyway, a really cool thing about practicing gratitude consciously, and they've scientifically proven this, is that it trains what's called our reticular activating system, which is the part of our brain that kind of decides what we notice, to notice more things to be grateful for. And so the perfect analogy is when you buy a new car. Like, let's just say you've just bought a new Toyota Kluger. Actually,
I just bought a new Hyundai. So
what'd you buy? You bought a Hyundai.
I just bought a new Hyundai, so that works.
Yeah, awesome. What model is it? Right.
The freaking the small one. Can't believe I can't remember the name of it. The Venue. Okay,
Hyundai Venue, right? I'm willing to bet now that you're going to notice a whole bunch of Hyundai Venues on the road. Like, you'll be out driving and suddenly you're seeing them more, right?
Okay, so
it's not that they're you go.
I'm going to actually relate to this one, what you just said. Okay, so my car got written off, and all I wanted, once my car got written off, I was actually pretty happy that that it did, because I've had my car for 12 years. And I'm like,
oh, really?
I did not feel safe in my car because it didn't even have ABS braking. Like, it didn't have, anyway. And I had to roll down the windows. It's like, I looked sort of positive in the fact that I just lost my car and I have to fork out money for a new car. I looked at the fact, hey, I'm going to have central locking now. I can actually click a button. Hey, I can actually like open all the windows. But anyway, I wanted an SUV. All of a sudden, all I can see around me are freaking white SUVs, because all I wanted was a white SUV. Never before in my life was I ever judging cars before. I became the most judgmental bitch when it came to cars ever since I decided that I wanted an SUV. Like, so judgmental. And then I found my Hyundai. So just had to reiterate that.
That's it. And that's a perfect example of you in your brain had decided that white SUVs were like relevant to you or important to you. You were interested in them. And so suddenly you're noticing them everywhere. It's not that there are more white SUVs on the road. You're just noticing more of them because when you drive past one, it stands out to you, right? That's what practicing gratitude does, is it actually trains our brain to start noticing more and more and more and more and more things to be grateful for, because we've trained our brain that this is something that we care about. You know what I mean? And so that is the ridiculously powerful impact of practicing gratitude consciously. As in, like, if you ask any person ever, anywhere, are you a grateful person? They're going to go, oh, of course I am. Of course I'm grateful. Like, yeah, my life is so good. And it's like, yeah, are you though? Because I know a lot of people who had it so good the last 18 months, high paying job that they, was not impacted. They maybe just had to work from home, healthy relationship, like so much going right in their life. And the only thing that was really impacted was just that like they couldn't go to the pub, and they still spent 18 months bitching about how hard it was. And it's like, you're allowed to be frustrated by these situations, but a little bit of perspective of realizing that there are some people who like don't have a roof over their head. And so like those are the people who say they're grateful, but are they grateful? They're not consciously really focusing on just how grateful they actually should be. Whereas when you start to really write things down, or like stop and just put your attention on how much you have to be grateful for, it trains the brain to just notice more stuff to be grateful for. And that allows us to realize how good we've got it. It allows us to then have this feeling of abundance of, oh, actually, I have so much that's going well for me. So that allows us to start to develop more of that belief that we are capable of having more to be grateful for, right? Like more of the things that we want, because we have an abundance mindset of, oh, I like when we have a lack mindset of, I don't have much that is going well in my life. Well, then, as we know, like our brain will create a reality that matches our beliefs. And so if we have a belief that we don't have much that's going well, then we're going to be kind of resistant to bringing in more that goes well, and we're going to be resistant to noticing anything that is going well.
I want to make it relatable to food again, because it's just what I do. So all you can think about is a restriction mindset for all the foods that you can't have when you're trying to diet down. All the fact, like I have a client that always seeks to eat out, always seeks this, that, and the other. But then there's other people out there that as soon as they start like some type of diet, they think about all the things they now have to give up instead of all the things they get to have. Like I get to have a bigger plate full of more wholesome foods. And it's like related to things outside of food, like eating in this way is going to give me a lot more energy. I spoke about this on my post today too. It's going to give me a lot more life. I can play with the kids. I have better sleep. I can poop like a normal person now. Like there are so many things to focus on, to be grateful for, that are outside of that as well. And this is why these skills are so important.
Yeah, totally. That's a really good point, actually, is the dieting thing, that if you're fixated on how restricted you are and how much you can't eat, then that makes you feel, or it stops you from noticing how much you're actually getting to eat or whatever. Really good example. So I guess that's the main. We've probably touched enough on gratitude, I suppose, that when you practice gratitude, it allows you to notice more that you're grateful for. That allows you to develop an abundance mindset, belief about yourself that you have so much going well in your life, which gives you the belief that you're capable of just attracting more and more stuff to be grateful for. Pretty much, gratitude is key to abundance. It's kind of, it'll come to me after the call, but there was something you said earlier that I remember I said, I couldn't remember what it was, and I wanted to touch on it because it was very impactful and important. But anyway, we'll talk about that on another podcast, I suppose. Was there anything else in particular? I'm just thinking about in terms of the notes we made. Maybe one thing we haven't touched on that I thought was important in terms of managing stressful situations and managing stress in general, particularly perhaps challenging situations like lockdown and things like that, is actually getting familiar with the worst case scenario, which Tim Ferriss calls it fear setting. So basically, in order to kind of overcome fears, so to speak, is actually getting really acquainted with them, in the sense that going, okay, like what is actually the worst case scenario? What is the thing I'm legitimately afraid of? And then going through a process of going, well, okay, what will that really feel like? Like what would actually happen? How will I deal with that? How will I have to respond to that? So I've kind of got a response plan, but equally having a contingency plan of, okay, so actually that's not the way I'm looking for, but having a contingency plan, and then having a okay, how do I prevent that happening? So in the case of lockdown, someone is terrified that they're going to lose their job and not be able to pay the mortgage, for example, right? So fear setting goes, okay, let's get acquainted with that. What's that going to feel like? Get familiar with those feelings rather than like them being this mystery. don't make it about like mean things about yourself. Don't make it mean that you're a failure or you're this or you're that or you're not worthy of love and acceptance and whatever. It's like, it's just something that might happen. Okay, if it happens, how will you respond to that? Do you have to get a job at Coles? Cool. Okay. Is that really that bad? Like, does the world actually end? Do you actually die if you have to get a job at Coles for a month to pay the mortgage? Like, I'm not saying that anyone wants to have to do that. My point is that if we actually get familiar with the worst case scenario and we realize that, whatever happens, we'll probably be able to respond to it. It might not be as bad as we think it's going to be. If you have to get a job at Coles, you have to move back in with your parents for a little bit. Okay, that'll suck a bit. Sure, let's not avoid those emotions as we spoke about. Let's actually feel them. But will the world really end if that happens? Probably not. So then suddenly now maybe it isn't such a terrifying, stressful thing. That's if it does happen. And otherwise, what could we maybe do now to prevent it happening? And so what we've done is we've taken this, because like pretty much the biggest thing about fear is the unknown, right? Like we're afraid of these things being out of our control. When we understand that we have very little control over anything except our state of mind, we realize that things aren't that dangerous. But my point is that, like, if you actually get acquainted with what's the worst case scenario, then suddenly it's not so scary anymore because you're familiar with it and you have a plan for if it does happen. You have a plan for trying to prevent it happening at all. You realize that if it does happen, it might not be the worst thing ever. You can ask yourself the question, how could I be grateful if that did happen, right? Like, if you did lose your job, okay, that would really suck. Would it teach you to get more in touch with your emotions? Would it be a blessing because you realize that you actually hate the job you're in and you needed something to happen to be a catalyst to change jobs or whatever? Would it teach you to be the better master of your internal world because you're having to learn how to adapt to a really stressful situation? The point is that when we get familiar with the worst case scenario, we can then start to actually plan for it. We can get familiar with it. We can ask ourselves better questions about how we're going to manage it, about how we'll actually benefit from it. That's all I got on worst case scenario, okay. But it's really important to be familiar with it.
I just want to emphasize the adapt, because acceptance and then adaptation is the most important thing, because if you're not going to accept it first, you're just going to this is when you start using the avoidance tactic, because you're not wanting to accept something for fear of judgment, fear of this, the whole acceptance thing, because we all want to be accepted. So you need to accept it, but then you need to adapt and make it work for you. And you need to change the story you tell about yourself. So I think that's like the best and like the best way to end this conversation. But I did take some notes that I really want to dig into on the next one, which we're going to get more into the worst case scenario, because I think that is what holds a lot of people back. Like, for example, I know some people who did not want to go to the gym whatsoever, or did not want to even work out at home because, for example, they just don't like the idea of working out at home. So they're not getting comfortable with the uncomfortable, or they refuse to go to the gym. They have access to the gym. I can't even freaking go to a gym right now. There are people out there that have access to a gym, but I need to wear a mask, but they're not going because they need to wear a mask. They're not getting comfortable with that, instead of the fact that I don't even have a freaking gym right now. Like, we're going to talk into that. That's going to be an example. And we're going to really go into the whole fear setting, the whole importance of the somatic, dig deeper into gratitude and shame acceptance, because
cool.
There was a lot there. So we'll leave the podcast here, and I hope you liked it. Like it, share it, subscribe, and even share it to just a friend if you don't want to share it publicly. But yeah, so we will see you on the next podcast, and Thomas will be coming on in a week or 2 or 3, whenever we both line up our times. Thank you.